Howdy ho, neighborinos. It's your girl, Lady Lily of Libraries, and welcome to the Reading Room, a cozy little corner of the internet where we discuss literature and what I happen to be reading each week. Now, for today's episode, we will be discussing The Yellow Wallpaper, written by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. I was originally introduced to this piece through a high school reading assignment, but I find myself rereading it from time to time. This is because it is not only an early work in feminist literature, but it is also a very good piece when examining the progression of how mental health and its treatment are portrayed, not just in literature, but in media as a whole. The Yellow Wallpaper was originally published in 1892. During this time, the Victorian era was in full swing in England. Women could not vote, and when you are mentally ill, things didn't look quite so great for you. I mention this because The Yellow Wallpaper is all about a woman's struggles with postpartum depression. Postpartum depression is a very unique type of depression in that it is experienced by women after giving birth. Now, postpartum depression is characterized not just through the general symptomology of depression, but also a difficulty of bonding with the newborn child. This often breeds feelings of guilt in the mother and can lead to recurring episodes of depression once the initial postpartum depression clears. Now, why would someone write about postpartum depression? Well, Charlotte Perkins Gilman suffered through postpartum depression herself after the birth of her only child. And because of the postpartum depression, she went through the very same kind of cure that our narrator goes through during the course of The Yellow Wallpaper. And this sort of piece is like a release for Charlotte, and how she can highlight the issues of how postpartum was treated back then, and also her own feelings on the matter, and how it led to her struggles later on in life. A couple of key things to look out for when reading The Yellow Wallpaper is the issues of identity and expression. I mention identity because back in those days, women were usually only had an identity through who they married and motherhood, and often lost their individuality because individual expression and individual ventures after marriage were strongly discouraged by the general culture of the day. And I mentioned expression because the structure of The Yellow Wallpaper is through a series of diary entries written by the narrator, and how she feels and how she writes about how she feels changes throughout the piece as the dates between entries grow longer and longer. And it really highlights a degradation in her mental health status through each entry. Another key thing to look for is the relationship between the narrator and her husband, particularly how it differs from the beginning of the story to the end. Does it get better? Does it get worse? Is he hyper-controlling? Or does he allow her to do as she pleases? Does he truly care about her in the way that a more modern man may care about his wife? That's up for you to decide. And the final thing to look for is the concept of treatment versus illness. Now, there's an old saying that goes, sometimes the cure is worse than the disease. Now, through the progression of the narrator's illness in The Yellow Wallpaper, you should keep that in mind while reading it. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time where we start a dramatic reading of The Yellow Wallpaper and break it down where we truly discuss each entry and have some questions at the end to discuss. Feel free to like the video if you're interested in receiving more content like this. Subscribe to be updated about new content, and feel free to look at my blog where I discuss these ideas in a far more cohesive and coherent manner. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.